march until they change the hour back again. We've been doing this in this masjid for many years, and we had the same system at LMM. It helps with any programming. It helps with people who have jobs and need to come a little bit later in the day, because 6:20 is a little bit. If we do Isha at 6:20, I'll pray Isha at work. Basically, I won't. I'll never be here for Isha. So it's 7:45. This Halaqa, the Seerah Halaqa, throughout these months of November, December, January, and February, we run it an hour before Isha Iqamah. So 6:45 to 7:45, we finish right at the Iqamah of Salat al-Isha, and that's kind of what we've been doing for the last number of years. So hopefully, inshallah, you'll find it to be not too difficult. All right, so, oops, this is a little bit too, where are we? So this is where we stopped last week in the Seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, and we had talked about what occurred in the Treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah. I didn't get through the whole story yet, so I still have a few pieces of the story that I think are beautiful, and you're going to enjoy me sharing them with you. And what had happened is that the Prophet ﷺ, he basically, Quraysh was were throwing the curveballs, and he was batting 1,000. He was sending them back. He was not, they were trying to provoke some degree of violence. They were trying to offend him. They were trying to throw him off his balance. It didn't matter. They sent Mikraz ibn Hafiz, they sent Hulays ibn Alqama, Budayl ibn Warqa, Urwa ibn Mas'ud. One after the other, the Prophet ﷺ dealt with all of them. He was waiting for them to finally send someone who had the intention of actually building or signing a treaty. Someone who was going to have a proper discussion, a proper negotiation. Up to then, at that moment, everyone they sent, it wasn't a negotiation. They were sending people out to intimidate, to provoke, to push back, to be rude, because the people in Quraysh were very upset. But the problem what was going on is that every time someone spoke to him, or came to him, by the time he went back into Quraysh, into Mecca, their opinion was like, let the man in. Just let the man in. He's here for Umrah. He's wearing ihram. I don't understand why you guys are making a big deal of this. Let him in. And then, of course, the leader of Quraysh would get upset, kick that person out. That person is not just a person from the street. He has a whole tribe behind him. So you take his tribe and leave. And in Mecca, over the course of the day, basically, or the few days, were emptied. There were no troops anymore inside. So when Quraysh, and when the Prophet ﷺ tried to initiate some degree he extended an olive branch to them. He sent Uthman ibn Affan in to negotiate with them. They sent out a rumor that they killed him, just to spite him, alayhi salatu wasalam. That, of course, is when he performed Bay'at al-Ridwan, is where he asked people to pledge themselves with him, alayhi salatu wasalam, to the death. No, you don't kill the messenger. That's one step too far. That means there's no ethics left in you. And there's no ethics, there's no point of negotiating. Then the only way to fix this is going to be through war. You see, you can only negotiate with people who are willing to follow the basic rules of human decency. The unspoken rules or the known, internationally agreed upon codes of conduct. For example, you don't kill journalists. You don't raid hospitals. You don't bomb heavily populated areas where civilians and children are. You don't do that. And if you do that, that means you're not someone who's willing to, there's no point of negotiating with you, because you have no respect at all for any of the internationally agreed upon laws or rules or codes of conduct. And this is where the Prophet ﷺ says, nope, no talking to you anymore. Al-Bay'ah. And the end of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will speak about Bay'at al-Ridwan. لَقَدْ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنِ الَّذِينَ يُبَايِعُونَكَ عَنِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ إِذْ يُبَايِعُونَكَ تَحْتَ الشَّجَرَةِ فَعَلِمَ مَا فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ فَأَنزَلَ السَّكِينَةَ عَلَيْهِمْ وَأَثَابَهُم فَتْحًا قَرِيبًا وَمَغَانِمَ كَثِيرَةً يَأْخُذُونَها. So the Quran came and talked about Bay'at al-Ridwan, even though the Quran never talked about Bay'at al-Aqaba. Like Bay'at al-Aqaba, Bay'atay al-Aqaba. Like the first Aqaba treaty and the second Aqaba treaty that happened, that I could argue was just as important, because without it, Islam probably wouldn't have even existed. It was how Islam started, in Medina at least. And the Quran doesn't really talk about it. We know about it, but the Quran didn't point it out. But it came to talk about this one, because this one was at a moment of extreme. It was very difficult. They were not armed. They weren't there for. They were not there for war. They were there for Umrah. They were outnumbered, and it's war in Mecca. No one bears arms inside the Haram. So Quraysh, when they saw that happening, they got scared. They got spooked. They quarreled amongst themselves. They panicked. They sent out someone to actually negotiate with the Prophet ﷺ. They sent out Suhail ibn Amr. And Suhail was a seasoned negotiator, and he came out with the intention of actually striking a treaty. But he was going to put up some obstacles throughout the way. Again, the Prophet ﷺ went through all of it. He didn't, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, I don't want that. Bismillah Allahum, fine. هذا ما تعاهد عليه محمد رسول الله. We don't know Rasulullah. Write your name and name your father. Fine. And then the actual articles of this treaty are extremely unfair. They're just unfair. There's nothing else to say about them. They are not. This is not a treaty of fairness. Quraysh was going to send back the Muslims that year, no Umrah, which is the ultimate blow to the Sahaba, that no Umrah. The next year they had all these conditions. You would come back, only 3 days. You would only have your swords. The swords would be put in their sockets. You would leave Mecca for you. You go back. Very specific. They would empty Mecca for them, as if they are they have disease. They would empty Mecca so no one would be in Mecca at the time. Right? Anyone who leaves the Prophet ﷺ's city and comes to Mecca, they can keep. Anyone who does the opposite, Muslims have to send back. Right? They have to send back. It's ridiculous. Like it's almost like he was putting this treaty together. He was writing these articles with the Prophet ﷺ to spite the Muslims, to bring down the morale, to make them feel bad about themselves. Interesting thing is that he didn't care at all, ﷺ. He could not care less. And the Sahaba couldn't understand why. But he didn't care. Why? Because he knew what he wanted. See, here's when you have a visionary. When you have someone who is not obsessed by the details. He can see the forest through the trees. Like he sees the bigger picture. He knows what is going to be of value. What's of value are two things. Number one, that peace at the end there. There would be peace for 10 years, no fighting. And people are free to enter into any alliance they want. They can be the allies of Muhammad, the Muslims, or Quraysh. That means he can talk to people about Islam openly now. So that's number one. Number two is that this is a document where Quraysh is acknowledging the existence of a city, an authority figure in that city, and a political regime in that city, like an actual government. They are acknowledging the existence of a country with leadership. Up to that moment, up to the 6th year of his hijrah, so 13 years in Mecca and 6 later, 19 years, they would only refer to him and those with him as rebels, as young boys who are trying to spite their parents, a bunch of lost souls that are terrorists or rebellions or whatever, to hooligans. They would come up with words. Why? Because they didn't want to ever. The Prophet ﷺ, he knew that the moment this was signed, regardless of what the articles were, Quraysh has now acknowledged the presence of a new country. And that's all he needed. That's why for him, the whole time through Hudaybiyah, big smile on his face. You can read the book, Seerah. The whole time as it's going on, he is smiling. He's happy. They're putting in articles that are ridiculous, like horrible articles. These points are not fair. Read them. It's absolutely. And he's like, sure, no problem, no problem. Why? Because he got it. He got them. They don't know it. Some of them didn't know it. Amr ibn al-As left. Abu Sufyan said, that's it, this is the end of Mecca. Like the people who had some degree of political knowledge within Mecca, they were like, this is over, we're done, he's won. And no one could figure out why. We're sending them back, they're not entering Mecca. And the Prophet said, no problem, we'll come back next year. Because he knows, and that's the importance of wisdom, that's the importance of spending time with people who have that wisdom and learning from them. The story I stopped with last time is in the midst of as they're signing, they're writing the articles. Ali ibn Abi Talib has the pen or the risha, as they say, and he's writing these words. As he is doing this, as he's writing the third or fourth one, where it says, if a man breaks loose from Mecca and comes to you asking for protection to live in Medina, you have to send him back if he doesn't have the permission of the leaders of Mecca, which means never, because they're not going to give permission to anybody. In the middle of this, a man would come running from afar. A man who had just broken loose from those who held him captive in Mecca. He's pleading with the Prophet ﷺ, the Muslims. Ya Rasulullah, anqidhni. Save me, Ya Rasulullah. Save me from this torture. Save me from the slavery that I'm going. Save me, Ya Rasulullah. His name was Abu Jandal. Abu Jandal happened to be, just so this story is something that you could not make up. This is the plot thickening to the end. Abu Jandal happened to be the son of Suhail ibn Amr, who was sitting there writing who was negotiating the actual treaty. The guy who was negotiating the treaty, Suhail ibn Amr, is sitting there, he looks back, it's his own son, coming from Mecca, pleading with the Prophet ﷺ to save him. So Suhail says, stop writing. He tells Ali, stop writing. قال هذا أول العهد There's the first opportunity for you, O Muhammad, to prove that you're going to see the articles of this treaty through. Send him back. That's what we agreed to. We're writing it right now. We just agreed to it. It's being documented. Send him back. And Abu Jandal is standing there saying, what? I broke through. I'm asking for protection of the Muslims. The Prophet ﷺ explains to him, عاهدناهم والمسلمون على عهودهم. We offered our word, we offered our covenants, and the Muslims always commit to their covenants. Abu Jandal is saying, Ya Rasulullah, أتعيدني إليهم يضطهدونني في ديني. You're going to send me back to them where they will oppress me because of my religion. You're going to يجعل الله لك يا أبا جندل مخرجا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Abu Jandal will offer you an opening, inshallah. What can I tell you? We have to go back. But Abu Jandal, he was very upset. And the Prophet ﷺ فَرَقَّ لَهُ قَلْبُ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. The Prophet ﷺ's heart couldn't help it. So he looks at Suhail, who's his father. It's not like the Prophet ﷺ is asking for his son. The Prophet ﷺ is asking for the other guy's son. It's absolutely, like these stories, we've heard them too many times, but we don't think about them. Like if it was his own son, they saying, oh yes, Suhail, I want to ask, this is what he told him. I want a favor from you. طَلَبٌ إِلَيْكَ يَا سُهَيْلِ. I have a personal favor to ask you. If it was his own son, it makes sense. Give me my own son. And then Suhail would be like, oh well. The Prophet ﷺ is pleading with Suhail, asking for a personal favor to save his son. To save Suhail's son, not his own. This is what's happening. And Suhail is saying, no, never. And the Prophet ﷺ يقول له دعه لي. Leave him just for me, for my sake. And Suhail is saying, no. And the Prophet ﷺ يقول لم نكتبها بعد. It hasn't been fully written yet. دعه لي. Just leave him for me. Just this one person, in front of everyone. He's broke. Leave him for me. I'll take care of him for you. He's your son. Never. He said no. Suhail would later on accept Islam, obviously. Become one of the great khutaba, one of the great orators of our deen. And he would be one of the, he'd be a very important figure during the time of Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu. Abu Bakr, after the Prophet ﷺ passed away, he needed men and women who knew how to speak, would go and calm the crowds down. Because there's people who were living around Medina who accepted Islam maybe 2 years before, and they didn't know much about the deen. And they didn't get to spend a lot of time with him, alayhi salatu wasalam. And his passing, for them, happened prematurely, to them. They'd only been a Muslim for 2 years. For them, they didn't get to actually learn from him as much. So people were starting to question their deen and question. So he needed people to go and calm the crowds. And Suhail, he spent a lot of time doing it. And the reason he did this, and the reason that he absolutely dedicated himself to this the whole time, for years, until he passed away, he would say, قال فإني لا أعلم كيف بأي وجه أقابل ربي وقد قلت ما قلت لرسول الله عليه الصلاة والسلام. I don't know with what face am I going to speak to my Lord after I said that to him عليه الصلاة والسلام. After I was so rude and so, even though I accepted Islam during the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام's life, he was a Sahabi, and he apologized. He was like, that moment, that day, I was rude. He pled with me. He asked me for a favor for my own son. It wasn't even for something personal to him. He was caring about my family more than I cared about my own family. Right? Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? قال ولم أتركه لرسول الله. I didn't give him to the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. And Abu Jandal was taken back to Mecca in chains. He was chained up and left beside, but he wasn't let go that day. Now, as this is happening, now we've talked to you about the articles of this treaty, so you know them now. The Sahaba, after this first point, had already, the noise of their argument and was very loud enough that they had to remove people out of the tent. Like they were making so much noise. The Sahaba were arguing with one another about, we're not doing Umrah this year. Oh, we're not doing this. How can we not do Umrah this year? And people were getting upset. And then they would hear the second article. Next year is conditional, it's 3 days, blah, blah, all this other stuff. They got even more angry. Anyone who leaves us can stay. Everyone who leaves them cannot stay. And they're getting more and more angry. And some of the people are like, not in front of the Prophet ﷺ's face, but behind him, without they're expressing their frustration and their objection to this, right? And one of the people who expressed it probably the loudest was one of the people who was most close to him, ﷺ, Sayyidina Umar. And if you think about the Prophet ﷺ's life, it's always, Anas tells us, قال ما كنت أرى إلا يعني جاء وأبو بكر وعمر وذهب وأبو بكر وعمر. I mean, he would come and Abu Bakr and Umar was with him. He would leave, Abu Bakr and Umar would leave with him. قال وإني لم أفعل فعلهم ولكني أحبهم فلعل الله بحبي لهم يحشرني معهم. I have not done what they've done, but I love them, and I hope that my love will bring me close to them. May Allah grant all of us that, inshallah, يوم القيامة. So, يعني Umar al-Khattab, who should be يعني standing right there, except was not. He got upset. But because everyone was removed from the tent after it got loud, and it was only who was left in the tent are Suhail ibn Amr and Mikraz, or يعني al-Hulays, who are just sitting, the two people who are there negotiating on behalf of Quraysh, and the Prophet ﷺ, and Ali who was writing. That's it. It's just everyone else had to leave. So even Abu Bakr was outside. So Umar was going around, and he was basically, and he was trying to stir up the crowds a little bit. Like he was trying to stir up the crowd. He was trying to rally some degree of support to maybe not do this. That this treaty is so unfair, is unjust. And he's going around. So he starts with يعني سيدنا يعني علي, and he says يا ألسنا على الحق أليسوا على الباطل على ما نعطي الدنية في ديننا. Are we not the carriers of righteousness of haqq? Are they not right now on the side of batil, of the opposite of righteousness, of oppression? And يعني, why are we offering this daniyah? Why are we accepting this lower hand in this treaty? Why is every article of this treaty يعني, oppressive towards us, unfair towards us? Why are we doing this? أليس هو رسول الله? Isn't he not the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? أليس, you ask the question, and Ali just do whatever he's doing, not a word. Sayyidina Uthman, same thing. Comes to Sayyidina Uthman, nothing. He gets nothing. And then he goes to Siddiq radiallahu anhu. And I love what he says here. When he goes to Sayyidina Siddiq, and he tells him the same thing. أليس هو رسول الله عليه الصلاة والسلام حقا أليس على الحق ألسنا على الحق أليس على الباطل على ما نعطي الدنية في ديننا. فأبو Bakr would say هو رسول الله وإن الله لن يضيع. He is the Prophet of Allah, as you said. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not يعني, send him in a direction of loss or يعني, misguidance. But then he would say, يا عمر إلزم غرزه إلزم غرزه. So, الغرز in Arabic is the place where you put your stick when you're walking. So they used to walk around with يعني, either they would have a weapon or a stick to help you. You're walking through desert and mountains and stuff, so you would have like a stick to help you along. So the gharz is you're walking and your feet, يعني, and you put your stick down, right? Your stick hits the. So he's not telling Umar to walk in the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ. That's a given. Ya Umar ilzam gharzah. When you walk in his footsteps, make sure that when your stick, you put it exactly where he puts it as well, meaning down to the detail. What are you doing? Why would you object to him, alayhi salam, in anything? Ilzam gharzah. This should be written and hung up on a wall in your house. Talzamu gharza Rasulillah, alayhi salam. You do exactly that which he does, to the detail, down to the, as much as possible. Follow him, alayhi salam, as much as possible to every detail that you're capable of. And that's what Abu Bakr, that's his mentality. Yes, Abu Bakr felt the same way. Ali did too. Uthman did. They didn't say anything to Umar. They didn't support him, but they didn't say anything. Why? Because they're all upset. They're all upset. They're all very upset that they're not going to perform Umrah this year. They have the hadi, they're in the ihram, and they're in front of Mecca, and the Kaaba's right there, and they're going to be sent back. To them, this is uncommon. No one has had this happen to them historically. They're the only group historically that were, before modern history, before modern history. Yani. Up to that moment, no one had been sent back from Umrah or Hajj. No one. You come for Umrah or Hajj, you're always going to be let in. Even if you're the arch enemy of the people on the inside. These were the first people who were ever sent back. They're all upset. So Abu Bakr is upset as well, but he taught Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab something. Ilzam gharzah. Stick to it. So Umar al-Khattab, he's not getting any, he wasn't able to rally the big names. Maybe some of the younger Sahaba got upset with him, but the big names, he couldn't get them on board. So he goes right to the source. He goes straight to the Prophet ﷺ, and he says the same words. Ya Rasulullah, alasta Rasulullah haqqa, alasta ala al-haqq, alasna ala al-haqq, alaysu ala al-batil, ala ma nu'ti ad-daniyata fi dinina. Why are you accepting this? So he would answer him like Abu Bakr. فيقول يا عمر أنا رسول الله. Yes, I am the Prophet of Allah. وإن الله لن يضيعني. Don't worry, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala won't send me astray. And then Umar al-Khattab took it one extra step. And he says, Ya Rasulullah, ألم تخبرنا أننا معتمرون. Didn't you say that we were going to, didn't you see in your vision that we were going to perform Umrah? You said this. So he smiles at his salat. He was smiling the whole time. He was the happiest he was seen. And they could see the contrast, because if you think about it, I mean, the last 19 years have been very heavy on him, and he was a very pleasant person to be around, always smiling, alayhi salam. But the last last year, were specifically heavy. The Battle of the Trench was very difficult. It was very difficult. It cost them a lot on almost every level. And then the Hadith al-Ifk, that year period where all of these fitnas were occurring, where people talk about his wife, and then there was all these issues of racism and lack of, just all the stuff that we talked about over the last maybe 5-6 weeks. So he, alayhi salam, this was a difficult, in general, it was not an easy time for him. But during that period of Hudaybiyah, he was seen to be very happy, at least after the treaty was written. Like he was very chipper and open. And so you say, Ya Umar, أرأيتني أخبرتك أننا معتمرون هذا العام. Let's see. Remember, go ahead. Remember, did I ever say it was going to be this year, Ya Umar? Remember, I told you I was going to do Umrah, but go back in your memory and see. When did I tell you it was going to be this year? So Umar stands there. All right, fair enough. That's a good point, I guess. But Ya Rasulullah, was kind of implied. Implied? Why did I imply it? I never said it was this year. I said we're going to perform Umrah, and we're going to perform Umrah. I didn't say it was going to be this year. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he calms down. Like he loses the argument. Basically, he can't continue because he put all of his weight in this one argument that this is how I should be. And the Prophet ﷺ offered him an answer that he had nothing to say about. So he felt disarmed. So he calmed down, right? And he stopped speaking. But he wasn't done. So he goes and he sees Abu Jandal sitting. Abu Jandal is in Hadid. He's chained up, and his father is sitting there talking with the Prophet and others around him. They're ironing out some details. In every treaty, in any agreement, there's always some details that need ironing. So they're talking. So Sayyidina al-Khattab goes and he stands right in front of Abu Jandal. And he takes his sword and he starts waving his sword back and forth, conveniently close to Abu Jandal. From the wrong side. He's holding the sword from the side where it cuts, like you hold a knife. Holding it from on the other side is close to Abu Jandal. He just is conveniently holding it very close to Abu Jandal, just waving it back and forth, saying, قال ألا إن أحدنا لكان يقتل أباه في سبيل الله. Oh, it is known that a good Muslim would not hesitate to take the life of his own father for the sake of Allah. He's sitting in front of Abu Jandal, his father right in front of him, right? So Abu Jandal looks at Umar, فقال يا عمر اقتله أنت, you kill him. إن كنت تريد قتله, if you want him to be killed, you kill him. So he is right there, you kill him. فقال عمر ما كنت لأعصي رسول الله. I would never disobey the Prophet عليه الصلاة that way. Abu Jandal would say, وما كنت أنا لأعصيه either. And neither would I. Why do you think I would do it? So Umar Khattab puts his sword away and he walks away. يقول عمر لقد أعددت كثير صلاة وصيام وصدقة عسى الله أن يغفر لي ما بدا مني يومها. That I have prepared a certain amount of salah and siyam and sadaqah and all good deeds, hoping that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive me for my behavior that day. Because he just got upset. He passionately got upset for the right reason, like his heart was in the right place. But he just didn't see. You're going to see that this story actually I'm telling you is because Sayyidina al-Khattab tells it to us, and that's why it's important for you to read, because he is someone who would admit whenever he went a little bit overboard. Right after they do this, and they sign the treaty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends Jibreel, and Jibreel starts to recite the Quran. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, inna fatahna laka fathan mubina, liyaghfira laka Allahu ma taqaddama min dhanbika wa ma ta'akhkhar, ويتم نعمته عليك ويهديك صراطا مستقيما وينصرك الله نصرا عزيزا. Indeed, we have opened for you a great opening. Fath is a word that is above victory. Victory is when you win one battle. Fath is when you have achieved something. It's a victory that opens doors and gates to other victories to come. Meaning it's a beginning to way more opportunities. Means a fath. Fath is a better word than nasr by far. So Allah is saying, indeed, we have offered you an opening, a clear opening. Fathan Mubin is a very clear one. Surah Al-Fatah, brothers and sisters, was revealed after Hudaybiyah, 2 years before Fatah Makkah. 2 years before Fatah Makkah. It has nothing to do with Fatah Makkah. They call Fatah Makkah as the prophecy of this surah. Like they use the word Fatah Makkah as a way to refer to the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He called Hudaybiyah Fatah, It turned into the Fatah Mecca later on. So they called that Fatah as a way to say that, subhanAllah, you see what happened here? It led to that later on. Not to substitute it, not to say that this Inna Fatahna Laka Fathan Mubina was the Fatah of Mecca. No, it's the Sulh al-Hudaybiyah that led later on 2 years to Fatah Mecca. So that Allah may forgive for you all of your sins. Those that happened before. Of course He's going to be forgiven, alayhi salatu wasalam. He had to put up with a degree of rudeness and a degree of transgression and bad behavior from his enemy and from the people he loved, alayhi salatu wasalam. Like he had to put up with all of these behaviors that were both on both sides. It wasn't just the enemy that was being rude. It was also his own people who weren't listening. They were having trouble. I point this out. I'll tell the story and then I'll go back. Once the Quran said that, Inna Fatahna Lak, we'll go back to the verses in a moment. I want to point out a few verses. When the Quran said, Inna Fatahna Lak, and he recited it, alayhi salatu wasalam, in Isha that night, after the salah, the Umar says, Ya Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, this is in Hadith Bukhari Muslim, Afathunhu, is this truly a fath? Qala na'am, huwa fath. Yes, it is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is calling it a fath. And then time passes. And within a year of Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, Umar would come in front of everybody. And he would say, رأيك دون رأيي يا رسول الله. قولك دون قولي يا رسول الله. What your opinion is the correct opinion and not mine. What you say is a truthful thing to say and not me. ألا إني ما كنت أراه فتحا. Indeed, I did not see it as a fath. فأراني ربي أنه فتح. And I see it now. So the graph of Muslim numbers, right? Like population, Muslim population. Historically, someone should do this, by the way. Someone should make like a timeline for it. Like it kind of grumbles along. Year 3, year 6, year 7, just grumbling along. Year 8, year 9, year 10, year 12, year 13, just grumbling along. And then you find this skyrocket for like a year and a half, right? And you know what happened there? Badr, Uhud, Khandaq, Hudaybiyah. Once it was peaceful. Once people weren't scared to speak to him anymore, alayhi salatu wasalam. Once you could be in once you were allowed to be in anyone's alliance, once Quraysh was not going to hunt you down if you went and spoke to the Prophet or became Muslim, and he had the room to speak, he had the space to talk to people about Islam, and people had the freedom of choice to accept or not accept, the numbers of Muslims went from, if you think about the armies, what were the armies? 300 and something on Badr, right? Like what, less than 700 on the day of Uhud, 1,500 on the day of Khandaq, all these small numbers. And then within 2 years from this moment, he came right now, by the way, for Umrah with 1,500 people. Only 700 were men who could bear arms. That's the number. Not everyone was with him for this. He's going to come back from Fatah Mecca with 100,000. You understand the difference? 100,000. In 2 years, he's going to have 100,000 people. He's going to have Abu Sufyan stand on the mountain and watch 100,000 troops walking in front of him. Abu Sufyan's heart is going to bleed. He's going to lose his mind watching it. He will tell Al-Abbas, لَقَدْ بَلَغَ مُلْكُ ابْنِ أَخِيكَ مَبْلَغًا عَظِيمًا. Your nephew's sovereignty, his mulk, is something amazing. قَالَ لَيْسَ مُلْكًا. This is not mulk. Abu Sufyan, it's nubuwwah. This is prophecy. This is different. But this is why? Because it was peaceful. Umar ibn Khattab, for the next 6 months, was going to watch the number of people accepting Islam, the strength the Muslims were going to have. And he would say, Ya Rasulullah, ما أعارضك في شيء بعد اليوم أبدا. I will never, ever, ever, Ya Rasulullah, object to anything you tell me to the day I die. And you are the one who knows, and we don't know. And you are the one who is knowledgeable. And he would stand there and he would be sobbing, radiallahu anhu, telling people, and I don't know. I spoke and I didn't know what I was saying. I had an opinion and I was wrong. But he knew, alayhi salatu wasalam. He saw it. He stood there in front of people because he wanted people to know. Because he made people know when he was objecting. So he needed to make people know when he was admitting and regretting that for doing that. But what was the difference? So it's actually even beyond that. Let me tell you how bad this was, because you're probably not understanding how bad this is. This is how bad this problem was. After they finished it all, after everything was done, they signed the treaty, the Prophet ﷺ is smiling, all the Sahaba are there, they're absolutely, they're so upset, they're so disgruntled, but they're hiding it. Why? They revere him, ﷺ, هَيْبَةً لَهُ. They wouldn't dare say something to his face. بيستحوا منه. They're ashamed, they're embarrassed, but they're upset, all of them. So he would say, okay, يا عباد الله, احلقوا واذبحوا. Khalas, we're going back, so shave your heads. So if you have ihsar, if you study fiqh, you know that if you do ihsar, if you go to perform umrah or hajj and you are denied, and that's called ihsar. Then what you do at that point is that you perform tahallul. You shave your head or you cut your hair, and if you have a hadi, you perform the dhabiha on the hadi, and then you go back. And you have to try and come back the year after, or you come back later on whenever you're allowed. It's called it's tahallul. So the Prophet ﷺ tells the Sahaba, okay, ihliqu wadhbahu. No one moves. So he says it again, Ya ibadallah, اذبحوا الهدي واحلقوا رؤوسكم وتحللوا. No one. Everyone just looking down, fiddling with something on their phone, something, whatever. Just not responding. Ya ibadallah, اذبحوا واحلقوا. And people just look around. They're not looking at him. It's not like they're challenging him. They just, they don't want to do it. So he got upset. Alayhi salatu wasalam. He goes into his small tent. And he finds there the savior of Ummah Muhammad, the wise Salama, sitting there, because she was the wife who came with him for this. فقالت يا سلمة هلك قومك يأمرهم رسولهم ويعصونه. Your people are ruining themselves. They are walking down a path of punishment from Allah. Their prophet is commanding them, and they are not listening. And he's upset, alayhi salam. Why? Because he expects more of them. Not because it's his personal command that they're. No, because you know better than to not obey a prophet. He's telling you, he's offering them something that they need to do based on the teachings of Allah. It's a fiqh. Do it, and they're not listening. So he got upset, alayhi salam. They found a way to ruin his mood, alayhi salam, that day by not listening. فقالت سلمة يا رسول الله هون عليك. Ya Rasulullah, take it easy. إنما هم قوم حرموا العمرة. They're just a bunch of guys who didn't get to go to Umrah. They're all upset that they couldn't go to Umrah. فاخرج أنت فاحلق واذبح يأتمر بك. Go outside, do it yourself. Start with yourself. Shave your head, slaughter your sheep, and then they'll all kind of follow along once you do it. تقول فكانت أبرك امرأة في مشورتها على قومها. She is the woman with the most barakah in her consultation upon for her people. So the Prophet ﷺ, he calmed down. He walked outside. He called Halaqa. So there's a beautiful hadith regarding this. It's a long one. I'm not going to do it. I'll do it probably later on in the Hajjat al-Wada'. But he would call the Halaqa, and you take the Musa, and he would start يحلق له رأسه عليه الصلاة والسلام, and then he would perform the dhabh. Once the Sahaba saw that the Prophet ﷺ had shaved his head and he had slaughtered the sheep, khalas, they knew it was over. There was no hope anymore. Hope was over. There was no way that this was going to be reversed later on. And because a second ago they were preparing. Look at their flexibility. Radiallahu anhu. Umrah, khalas, Umrah. Go from a different route. Go from a different route. Don't cause no bloodshed. Anyone who comes in, catch, tie up, send in. Don't harm anyone. Hadir. Someone comes rude, we don't respond to him. Then Uthman is dead, we have to pledge for death. They pledge for death. Whatever they're being told, Hadir ya Rasulullah, Hadir ya Rasulullah. Not very flexible people. And then they said no Umrah, and that was their last straw. It was like the deprivation of Umrah for them was the final straw. They couldn't take that anymore. Radiallahu anhum ajma'in, right? And they couldn't help it. And then the Prophet ﷺ, when he did this, قال فقام كل منهم يحلق لصاحبه يجرحه فتسيل الدم. Like they started shaving each other, but they're like very rough. Shave your head and you'll shave. And everyone's bleeding from the different parts because they're all upset with the fact that they had to do this because they didn't want to. We don't have on record. I don't have for you on record anywhere in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, anywhere where he commanded his Sahaba and they didn't listen. I don't have another example. Nowhere. This is the only time I have where I can tell you. It's not like they objected and said no. They just stood there, kind of, being a little bit late, just not being the first person to step up to the command. Why? Is because of the pain that they felt. What was their problem here? See, this is the importance of this story. What is the problem? What's the issue here? The issue is long-term vision versus short-term vision. The importance of this piece. We still have this problem today. It has not been solved, in my opinion. We're still suffering with the same thing that, I don't know. Yeah, I'll recast it again. God forbid we ever figure any of this stuff out. Yeah, good. It's the same problem that has existed back then. It still exists today. The Sahaba, they got stuck with their short-term goals. They wanted Umrah. He wasn't there for Umrah. He went with the intention of Umrah, alayhi salatu wasalam. But he knew what he was looking for. He had a long-term goal. He had a long-term vision. he was able to give up his ego, his personal desires. Right? He was able to give up his reputation, the way he was going to be seen amongst people, to achieve a goal that was long-term beneficial for everyone. You see, Quraysh, what they wanted, and Quraysh was also short-term. Like, Quraysh's vision was also very short, very short. Quraysh just wanted to appear for that moment in front of the Arab that they were the winners, that we forced him back. He was not allowed into Mecca for Umrah. A victory for them. It's a victory. It's a Nasr. They got a Nasr. Quraysh got a Nasr. They got to walk around in front of Arab and say, we sent him back. And we told him you can't enter, and we didn't allow him to enter, and he went back this year. A Nasr for them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted the Prophet a fatah. Here's a fatah. Sometimes you lose a battle, and then you win the war. Right? So we'll lose this battle, no problem. He wasn't, every other article in the treaty was designed, they didn't really care that much about, Muslims come here and send them back, don't send this guy back. All these small pieces of the treaty were just there to try and provoke him, to try and humiliate the Muslims, make them put down their egos. Yeah, you can only come next year for 3 days. But I want to do more than that. No, 3 days and that's it. And you can't have this with you. And we will empty Mecca because we don't want to see you or smell you. This is how they're speaking to the Prophet. He's like, no problem. It's absolutely, the story is breathtaking. Like, he's just sitting there smiling. Yep, no problem. I've already won. In his mind, you've already written the treaty. You've already written, this is what Muhammad ibn Abdullah, the leader of Medina, has agreed to. With the leader of Quraysh, you've already acknowledged my presence. I don't care anymore. Write what you want. What else do you want? What else do you want me to throw in? I'm sure he would have thrown in a couple of more, a few more things if they wanted, right? For them to seem macho. They can seem macho, no problem. Because he knew what was going to come next. Now I have peace. Now I can speak to people with Islam because my idea is stronger. Ya Akhwani, the idea is stronger. You carry with you the superior way of life. You carry with you the idea that has more merit to it. That I don't have to fear what other people think or say because my idea is the one has lasted the centuries and will continue to last. He just needed space to speak peacefully with people. Because up to that moment, it was just war after war after war, oppression, transgression, people being slaughtered because they accepted Islam, everyone being afraid to hear him, to listen to him. He was being called names, called a wizard, a magician, whatever. All these things to get people propaganda, to get people not to listen to him. But now, khalas, people would listen. He knew. He knew that this would change. Why? Because khalas, now that people will listen to me, no one should be forced into Islam. In his mind, he's like, what, you want any Muslim who leaves Medina and comes to you not to be sent back? Thank you, Jazakallah khair for adding that in. I don't want them back. Why would I want the munafiq back? If someone left me and went to you, that means he was never with me to begin with. Please don't send him back. Like, keep him with you. I have no need for him. As for the people that you're not going to let me keep, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them a makhraj. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala they'll persevere, they'll make it. For him, all these are small, petty things. They're petty things. Often, we can't see the far future because our egos are too big. You can't see it. Often what is clouding your judgment, what is blocking your vision of the future, what you're going to need in your life, is the size of your ego. Quraysh couldn't see. The Sahaba, for a moment, what they wanted Umrah. They allowed themselves for a moment, their desires for a moment became bigger than the shark. They couldn't see. They couldn't see what came after. They couldn't see it. He did, alayhi salam. He was fine. No problem at all. But the Sahaba struggled. They learned a lesson that day. That was an important lesson for that generation to learn. Not to let your personal desires, your ego, to cloud your judgment or to block your view of what really matters. Don't let that take away your ability to zoom out for a moment and just see the bigger picture here. What exactly are we doing? What's the Umrah? That's the goal? Meaning all of this, these 2 billion Muslim Umrah, you do a Umrah that year versus the year later. In the bigger scheme of things, what does that matter? Honestly, do you even care if they ever did Umrah? Forgive me, most Muslims don't even know that they did Umrah. If we did a trivia and asked how many people, most people don't even know that the Prophet ﷺ, the Muslims ever did Umrah. They have no idea. It doesn't matter to them. But that's life. That's life. Sometimes you get caught up on this small detail, on this little detail. I want to do that. I want to buy this. I want to own that. I want to go this place. I want to work in that little place. You get caught up in this one detail and you lose the ability to see the bigger picture of what your life is going to be about, what your legacy is going to be. What you're going to leave when you leave, what are you going to leave behind you when you walk away from this life? What are you trying to achieve for yourself in this life, for this ummah? The Sahaba, for a moment, they lost vision of that. I don't blame them because it was a hard time. They had gone through a lot. Honestly, if you were to count the amount of stress and agony and pain and loss that the Sahaba went through for the last 19 years, I am in no position to judge how they felt that day. But I am obligated to learn the lesson. I am obligated to learn the lesson that they learned that day. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he knew better. And they all said, Ya Rasulullah, ra'yuka duna ra'yina. It's your opinion. It's your vision. It's your understanding of things that matters. We don't know what we're talking about. We're sorry. We're sorry that we were so petty that day, focused on this one little thing, instead of what really mattered. Today our ummah has the same problems. We allow personal egos and personal desires and small agendas and little differences of opinion between two people, and I don't like that guy, and I don't like that, we allow these things to fracture, to further fracture this ummah of ours, and take away our ability to plan long term and to solve our larger problems and take care of our own and of our societies, our communities, our children, ourselves. We don't lack anything. We don't lack numbers. We don't lack expertise. We don't lack wealth. We just lack this. We honestly just lack what he had alayhi salatu on that day. Get caught up on these small little things that don't matter at all. And we lose the bigger picture. What's the bigger picture for us here? Do we even know what the bigger picture is? Have you even zoomed out to figure out what is the bigger picture for our existence here as Muslims? Or in the world today? Or the human race is caught up on the petty things to the degree that we've lost the bigger picture that our planet is frying. That we've killed almost everything that's beautiful on this world. That within a few decades from now, the biodiversity of this planet will be completely completely wiped out. The temperature will be so bad that we can't live here anymore. People are going to die in the millions because there's going to be lack of fresh water, lack of energy. We've been burning so much coal in a greed frenzy on this planet, trying to get ahead and that we've lost the bigger picture. That this habitat has to welcome everyone, human and non-human. It has to welcome every living thing, and we've lost that. We've even lost that bigger picture. And I wonder how much is going to matter when we're fighting over strength and power and influence, and when there's no more rainforests left, when the lungs of the planet are completely burnt out, when there's no more fresh water to drink, and the soil of the earth won't produce anything anymore. It's too hot to walk outside, and then what? And what was the point of any of it if we treated Mother Earth that way? Like, this is a problem that we've always had as a human race, where we got caught. Like, you don't like your children getting, like, with your own children, you'll take them. Like, we have a full weekend ahead planned. We're going to go and do all these things. And then they get upset because they didn't get to watch that one video that they wanted to watch, or they didn't get the type of candy they wanted to eat. And then you try to talk to them and say, yeah, Habib, we have a full 3 days planned for you. Drop this little, but they can't. We're no different. I'm no different than that 3-year-old. I am no different than that 3-year-old. It's just on a bigger scale, that's all. Just a bigger scale, just caught up on the little stuff. I need my house, my car, my job, that's not the bigger picture here. It's not the bigger picture. Muslim institutions fighting each other all the time, and people in positions of power working against one another and not listening. Who's paying the price? The ummah pays the price. The children, their Islamic education, their mental health, families, and their development, their identity. That's who pays the price. Ultimately, those are the ones who pay the price for everything. And if we actually want to make a difference in the world that we live in, then we have to start learning from this story. Al-Fath, the story of Al-Fath, as in Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, as in the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after it happened, sent this ayah for all the Sahaba after Umar did his little dance, and the Sahaba kind of didn't listen the moment they should have listened right away. After all that, and the Halaqu and Dhabahu, and they're ready to go home, well, they have to pray Isha. Inna fatahna laka fatham mubina. They got to hear it with their ears. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. هو الذي أنزل السكينة في قلوب المؤمنين ليزدادوا إيمانا مع إيمانهم. Indeed, He sent serenity into the hearts of the believers and helped them stand their ground during this difficult number of days. It went up to around a month or two. Hudaybiyah took a while. Like all these events that I explained to you took a while, up to 2 months in some narrations. Right? So the Sahaba needed to be steadfast. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put sakina in their hearts. So they stood by the Prophet ﷺ, and no one actually fully objected. Like the Quran is here to say something nice about them. Usually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you'll find that whenever the Sahaba don't behave 100%, will come and point out that should have been done better. That should have happened in a better way. But not in Surah Al-Fatih. Surah Al-Fatih is a lot of praise for the Muslims. Why? Because that was hard. It was seen as that was hard. That's not easy. You got over yourselves. You did pretty well. All of you did pretty well. Even though at the end you kind of lost your way for a moment, but you all did well. I think I'll end with that, inshallah. So, not all of Surah Al-Fatih. So, going through, I did this last year. I went through Surah Al-Fatih. I explained it all. But I lost all of the younger people within 5 minutes of doing that. So I'm not going to do it this year. You can go back and listen to the Sharh if you want to. It's a very beautiful surah and explains like everything I talked to you about in great detail and in a great beauty as well. But not the whole thing was not revealed all at once. It was revealed up to ayah number 26. And then the ayah number 27 was revealed a little bit later, like a few months later, where Allah said, لَقَدْ صَدَقَ اللَّهُ رَسُولَهُ الرُّؤْيَا بِالْحَقِّ. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted His Prophet a truthful vision. لَا تَدْخُلُنَّ الْمَسْجِدَ الْحَرَامَ إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ آمِنِينَ مُحَلِّقِينَ رُؤُوسَكُمْ وَمُقَصِّرِينَ لَا تَخَافُونَ. Indeed, you will, with the will of Allah, enter Mecca and perform your Umrah, feeling safe. And some of you will shave, and some of you will just, some of you do the full sunnah, and some of you do a little bit less. فَعَلِمَ مَا لَمْ تَعْلَمُوا. He knew what you did not know that day. فَجَعَلَ مِن دُونِ ذَلِكَ فَتْحًا قَرِيبًا. And he prepared right after that for a very close fath, which was going to be Khaybar and Fath Makkah, and all that came after. All that came after that. And that's why at the end of Surah Al-Fatih, you have this beautiful ayah, Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Muhammad is the Prophet of Allah, is the Messenger of Allah. وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ, and the people who are with him. أَشِدَّاءُ عَلَى الْكُفَّارِ رُحَمَاءُ بَيْنَهُم. They are heavy-hearted against their enemies, and they are very merciful and compassionate towards one another. تَرَاهُمْ رُكَّعًا سُجَّدًا يَبْتَغُونَ فَضْلًا مِنَ اللَّهِ وَرِضْوَانًا. You see them in different postures of ruku' and sujood, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His bounty and asking Allah for His pleasure. سِيمَاهُمْ فِي وُجُوهِهِمْ مِنْ أَثَرِ السُّجُودِ. You see the beauty and the way that in their faces from the hours that they spend in prostration. This is not talking about the spot, and this is talking about the nur that is in the face. When the heart is filled with the love and obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it becomes apparent on your face. People can see the iman. It shines through. You'll know this with life. If you haven't experienced this yet, you will. You'll run into people and you'll see iman radiating right through them, and you'll see other people who you know they're struggling and they're far away. And you'll sit with someone, this person, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has filled their hearts just by seeing them. سِيمَاهُمْ فِي وُجُوهِهِمْ مِنْ أَثَرِ السُّجُودِ ذَلِكَ مَثَلُهُمْ فِي التَّوْرَاةِ. That is what the Torah says about them. وَمَثَلُهُمْ فِي الْإِنْجِيلِ. And then their example in the Injil, كَزَرْعٍ أَخْرَجَ شَطَأَهُ فآزره فاستغلظ فاستوى على سوقه يعجب الزراع ليغيظ بهم الكفار. And the Injil, their example is the example of zara, something green that has been put in a seed that was put in the ground, and it comes out, and it slowly gets larger and taller and longer and stronger, and slowly becomes a tree, and it bears fruit. It bears fruit eventually, fruit that will bother their enemies later on. وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ مِنْهُمْ مَغْفِرَةً وَأَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. Indeed, Allah has promised them, the believers, those who have accepted Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with iman and performed the best deeds, they will be granted forgiveness and great reward yawm al-qiyamah. And that was the end of Surah Al-Fatih, and it was very meaningful to them. Even though up to that moment there was no fath, at least not in the traditional understanding of fath. The traditional understanding back then was a war, where you stood victorious at the end of it with a blood-covered sword. The Quran would call fath a treaty of peace that was signed. Right? May that stay with you, inshallah. Every single culture in the world, when they speak of victory, they see a faris, a knight on his horse, or someone on top of a tank, with bloodshed, victorious after Islam, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to call something fath, the greatest of victories, He referred to a treaty that was signed that brought peace to the land. It didn't last forever, even though it was 10 years. The plan was 10 years, but it didn't last for 10 years, as you know. So the next year, a full year goes by. A full year goes by, they come back the next year. And this is the 7th year where Umrah al-Qada occurs. The Prophet ﷺ would come back and he would tell the people, لا يخرجن معي إلا من خرج معي العام الفارط. Meaning no one should come with me unless they had come with me the first year. We're not going to take anyone new, just because this is contextual. If you weren't there, you don't know like the details, so you need to come. Before we do that, let me tell you a quick story, because this is an important piece. So after the Prophet ﷺ goes to Medina, a man breaks loose from Mecca and comes. His name is Abu Basir. Abu Basir is one of the Sahaba. And he comes to the Prophet ﷺ seeking protection and refuge. And the Prophet ﷺ tells him, I can't. We made an agreement. I can't. I have to give you back to them. I have to أسلمك. I have to hand you back over to their to their troops. Abu Basir understands the story, hears the story, understands it. He says, okay, I understand. لكن يا رسول الله إذا سلمتني ما بيني وبينهم هل لك فيه شيء? Once you hand me over to them, between me and them, do you have any interest? Like, does it matter to you? Like, am I supposed to now obey, or is it between me and them after you give me away? قال لا بينك وبينهم. It's none of my business. My job, like my agreement, is that I hand you over to their troops. What you and them do is none of my business. فقال أبو بصير, that's all I needed. I just need to know that you're not involved in how I treat them. No, you're fine. Abu Basir was a true warrior. He goes, he takes out the whole troop after he's basically, they put him in, the Prophet ﷺ gives this man to them, and they take all his weapons, and they put him in shackles, and they take him back. How exactly Abu Basir broke loose, killed them all, took all of their weapons and left, I don't know. But he did. Radiallahu anhu, he was able to break loose from all of them, take all of their weaponry and go, and he started a camp somewhere close to the sea. Close to modern day Jeddah, as some of the narrations say, somewhere close there. And he sets up shop over there. This is right at the intersection of where a lot of the caravans come and go. And what ended up happening is all of the Muslims who the Prophet ﷺ was supposed to give back, they stopped coming to Medina. Because they knew that if they went to Medina to the Prophet ﷺ, he was going to call the troops of Quraysh here and give them back. So they stopped going to Medina altogether. Where did they go? Right to Abu Basir. And within a few months, Abu Basir had a couple of hundred people. He had a small army over there. And this army was causing all sorts of havoc. Abu Jandal was one of the people who made it over there. Abu Jandal was incarcerated in Mecca. And he broke loose and he went over and he spent the time with Abu Basir for a number of months. And they were causing all sorts of havoc to the caravans and the Quraysh's caravans and other caravans. So Quraysh, they send to the Prophet ﷺ saying, Ya Muhammad, inna tarakna laka haula. Because we remember the thing on the treaty where you can't take back the people that leave Mecca and come to you? We gave up that one. You can have them all. فقال رسول الله نحن على العهد. No, my agreement is an agreement is an agreement. You said I can't take them, I can't take them. So they would come back and say, Ya Muhammad, please take them. Just please take them. So the Prophet ﷺ would say, okay, I'll take them. So he sends a kitab, like he sends a letter by Abu Jandal. Abu Jandal came to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ says, go back and tell Abu Basir, because Abu Basir was their leader, and tell Abu Basir to come to me and to bring, Jazahullahu khairan. And when narration قال ويح أمه لو كان له جيش, like what a man, like what a hero. If he had a little bit of a posse, he could cause all of trouble, and he did. And the Prophet ﷺ كان راضيا عن أبي بصير, was very happy with Abu Basir, so he sent him a personal kitab, من محمد رسول الله إلى أبي بصير السلام, all that beautiful stuff that a person would write in بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام أحمد الله إليه, come to us, when you get this, please bring your people and come to us. Abu Jandal makes it over to Abu Basir had passed away already. they had made it over there, and Abu Basir had already, he got sick and he had passed away. قال فدفنا معه كتاب رسول الله عليه الصلاة والسلام. So we buried him, and we put with him in the grave the risala that the Prophet ﷺ had sent him. So So at Yawm al-Qiyamah, he has something to show for his life. And then they all came back to Medina. The next year, now you can say what happened within this year. It wasn't a full year. It wasn't a full year. It was just, because after the Hijjah, it's Muharram, so it's a new year. So it wasn't a full year, it was less than a year. But you can ask me what happened in this year, and I can tell you I don't know for sure. A lot of saraya. The Prophet ﷺ was spreading out a lot of small groups to protect the parameters of Medina, and a lot of wufud. A lot of people came and accepted Islam. The reason that I don't have a ton of stories to share with you from this period is because of how busy he was, alayhi salatu wasalam, and the Sahaba were with da'wah. This was the busiest they ever were with da'wah. Meaning the number of people accepting Islam was very high, and there was no time, so we don't have a lot of stories because it was just one group after the other. And the Prophet ﷺ was preparing people, sending this person that way, sending this person that way, and people were accepting Islam in the hundreds. So I don't have stories because no one had time for stories. It was just people accepting Islam in the hundreds with it. But he didn't want to bring hundreds and hundreds and hundreds to Umrah. So he said, only those who went with me, go with me. So he took the same number that went with him ﷺ the first time. And exactly like Quraysh wanted, he went ﷺ only with the swords, fil qirab, put it within their sockets. But he did bring with him fursan ﷺ. He brought a few hundred knights in armor on with their full arsenal. And when he approached ﷺ during this Umrah, this is called Umrah al-Qada, by the way. So if you ever get a trivia question, it's Umrah al-Qada, because it's the Umrah making up for the Umrah that he didn't get to do that year. So the 7th year of Hijrah, he did Umrah al-Qada, alayhi salatu wasalam. So he would come back with the same number, but he had with him now a troop of knights that were right behind him. So Suhail ibn Amr, who was the person who negotiated with him, he came out to meet the Prophet ﷺ because they agreed when he was going to come back. He said, Ya Muhammad, ma ala hada ittafaqna. There's now agreed upon. What are they doing? فقال لا إنهم لن يدخلوا معنا. Don't worry, they're not entering with me. قال ففهم سهيل. Suhail understood why this was the case. The Prophet ﷺ was in fear of a betrayal, of treason, of bloodshed in Mecca. So he needed an insurance policy. Like, they're not going to enter Mecca. They're going to stand right outside. All of them. And they did. They stayed there for the full duration of the time. These warriors waiting. In case, la samah Allah, something happened, they tried to harm the Prophet or harm the Muslims, the Prophet ﷺ had the cavalry prepared to protect him, so he didn't take them in. And then they would enter for Umrah. Quraysh, this is how low their behaviors were. They absolutely emptied Mecca from everyone. There was no one in Mecca at all. They had sent all of the families out into the peripheral neighborhoods and up to the mountains. The children, they were scared that any of the youth would hear what Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam and his ashab are saying, and they would be influenced, so that they would be interested. So they sent them out into the periphery so no one would be there. And then they would start spreading propaganda amongst them, saying, they're tired, they're all weak, they're living in a disease-filled city, which is Yathrib. Yet Medina was filled with disease for a long time. Everyone who was there got sick. Like there were diseases in Medina that didn't exist elsewhere, so people were always scared of it. So they started saying, the ta'bani, they're sick. فقال عليه الصلاة والسلام رحم الله اليوم امرأ أراه من نفسه قوة. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant mercy upon the ones who show strength from themselves. And what he did alayhi salatu wasalam is that he brought out his right shoulder in Umrah. So when you're wearing, in Tawaf, so when you're putting the ihram on, the men are wearing that one piece that's covering their lower part of the body, and then they have the one piece on top. So what he did was, this piece was on top of the shoulder, but this one, he went and he put under his shoulder, alayhi salatu, and brought up the others. So and it's called ittiba'. So if you study the fiqh, you know that the first three ashwat, you do ittiba'. And he would do it, alayhi salatu, and the Sahaba would all do the same. Why? To show off their biceps, yeah. to show off their muscles, yeah. To show that they're still strong. And then Umar would ask, Ya Rasulullah, هذا اليوم أفيبقى هذا إلى يوم القيامة? We did this today. There was a reason for it. Do we do it as a sunnah until the day of judgment? فقال هذا إلى يوم القيامة. Until the day of judgment, this will always be something you should do. Why? So that we always go back and remember this. SubhanAllah, when you perform a proper hajj, there's all these little details that remind you and teach you about the stories that happened back then, and puts you in that moment to remember what occurred and how it occurred and how you are here today and what you can do to further the cause and to move the needle forward. I'll end it under that, inshallah. We'll go for Qiyamah al-Isha. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Jazakumullah khair wa barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. We'll continue next week, inshallah. You can make Iqam right away, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
Put your toes on the front part of the directly line, closing the gap, straighten your line, silence your phones. Still, I don't know what I just want to read anything tonight. I'm not sure what they are. Still, alhamdulillah. Allahu Akbar. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. ولقد آتينا لقمان الحكمة أن اشكر لله ومن يشكر فإنما يشكر لنفسه ومن كفر فإن الله غني حميد. وإذ قال لقمان لابنه وهو يعظه يا بني لا تشرك بالله إن الشرك لظلم عظيم. ووصينا الإنسان بوالديه حملته أمه وهنا على وهن وفصاله في عامين أن اشكر لي ولوالديك إلي المصير. وإن جاهداك على أن تشرك بي ما ليس لك به علم فلا تطعهما وصاحبهما في الدنيا معروفا واتبع سبيل من أناب إلي ثم إلي مرجعكم فأنبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. يا بني إن إنها إن تك مثقال حبة من خردل فتكن في صخرة أو في السماوات أو في السماوات أو في الأرض يأت بها الله إن الله لطيف خبير يا بني أقم الصلاة وأمر بالمعروف وانه عن المنكر واصبر على ما أصابك إن ذلك من عزم الأمور ولا تصعر خدك للناس ولا تمش في الأرض مرحا إن الله لا يحب كل مختال فخور واقصد في مشيك واغضض من صوتك إن أنكر الأصوات لصوت الحمير الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر تحية الصلاة ورحمة الله أشهد أن لا إله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده ربنا ولك الحمد كثيرا الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده ربنا ولك الحمد كثيرا الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر تحيات لله وصلاة طيب هذا السلام عليك ورحمة الله وبركاته أشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وصلى الله صليت على إبراهيم وبارك على محمد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.